100,000 price drop on this Kaneohe listing, and it has two primary bedrooms, one on the first floor, one on the second.
Let's start with the number because on this Kaneohe home, that's really the whole story. It's listed right around 1.65 million. It started at 1.75 and the price came down $100,000. So that part's already out in the open. But here's the thing, a price cut by itself doesn't actually tell you much. What tells you something is where this price lands once you stack it against every home that's already sold on these streets. And when you actually run that comparison, this price sits somewhere most people wouldn't guess. Stick with me. I'll line it up against the real sold comps, the county's own numbers, and the price per square foot, so you can see exactly where the value sits. Welcome back to Oahu Home Tours, the channel where the home tour comes with the real numbers and a full market read, not just pretty footage. I'm Oksana with Island Living Oahu, and today we're in Ahuimanu Hills, a small pocket of Kaneohe on the windward side of Oahu. One renovated home and a real Oahu, Hawaii real estate market update built around it. Here's what I do a little differently on this channel. I'm not just going to walk you through the rooms and tell you the counters are nice. You can see that for yourself. I'm going to give you the real market data on this home and this neighborhood, the way I'd break it down for a client before they ever wrote an offer. Numbers first. So let's start outside. Two-story contemporary home, fully renovated this year, sitting at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac with the Koolau range right behind it. That's the windward side of Oahu. It's the whole reason people happily put up with the drive. The valuation piece on this one is really worth sticking around for. Inside, the layout opens right up. The living room and kitchen share one space, and the whole thing was taken down and redone this year. Quick favor while we walk. If you like homes broken down this way, by the actual numbers and not just the finishes, go ahead and subscribe. Let's do the comparison I promised you. So where does this price actually land? Forget any estimate, let's use real sales. In the last year, the homes that sold in this neighborhood ran from about 1 million on the low end, for one that needed major work up to about 1.72 million for a much larger 7-bedroom place. The everyday 3 and 4 bedroom homes clustered in the high 1.3s to the mid 1.4s. And the single closest comparison to this house is a home almost the exact same size, right around 2,400 square feet, that sold recently for about 1.615 million with no major renovation on record. This one is asking 1.65. So you're looking at roughly $35,000 more than a same-size home sold for. And for that, you're getting a full top-to-bottom renovation instead of a dated one. That's the comparison that actually means something. And it's not a number the listing hands you. You have to go pull it. Now look at the county's tax assessment. Because it tells you something, the listing price won't. Where the value actually sits. The county assessed this property at about 1.47 million for this year, and assessments in Hawaii typically run under true market value. So a 1.47 assessment on a home asking 1.65 isn't a red flag, it's the gap you'd expect. And here's the part most people skip right past. Of that, just over $1 million is the land. The building, all that renovation included, is assessed at about $460,000. So roughly 2/3 of what the county thinks this property is worth is the ground it sits on, not the house on top of it. That's Hawaii in one number. You're really buying the land underneath, and the home is what lets you enjoy it. And these aren't values that have been sliding backward either. The county's total assessment on this property has ticked up each of the last couple of years, from the mid 1.3 millions 2 years ago to about 1.47 now. Steady and gradual, which is exactly what you want to see. Not a number that spiked and could give it all back. One more way to sanity check it. Per square foot, this home works out to about $680 a foot. Strip out those same two extremes I just mentioned, and the normal range in this neighborhood lands somewhere around $670 to $700 a foot. So this home, the only one in the recent set that's been fully renovated, is priced right in the middle of that band, not at a premium over it, in the middle of it. For a house you can move into without lifting a hammer, that's a number worth sitting with for a second.
And step back with me here because this is the part I really want you to take away. Put those three things together. The price sits right in the middle of the per foot range for this neighborhood. The premium over a comparable same size home that wasn't renovated is only about $35,000 for a full renovation. And the value underneath it all is in the land, which the county has assessed higher every single year. Three separate data points, none of them coming from the seller and none of them coming from me, and they all point the same direction. That's what doing your homework actually looks like. All right, back to the tour. The main level primary is part of what makes this floor plan unusual. A walk-in closet and a full primary bath with a walk-in shower. The reason a main floor primary is worth pointing out is flexibility. You've got a complete private suite on the entry level, separate from everything upstairs. That opens up options a lot of two-story homes don't give you, whether that's a guest setup, a quiet work from home wing, or simply having a bedroom that isn't sharing a floor with the others. The room takes real furniture, not just a bed and a nightstand. Off the main level, there's a half bath that doubles as the laundry. Washer and dryer tucked right in, plus a water heater closet and some extra storage by the kitchen. Little things, but storage is what people forget to look for until they're living without it. Here's where the renovation actually earns its keep. In this neighborhood's recent sales, this is the only home that's been fully redone. Most of what's traded here was original or lightly updated. Some of these homes were built back in the late 70s and 80s. So when you compare this home to those sale prices, you're not comparing apples to apples. A renovated home and a dated home can sit on the same street and be two completely different purchases once you add up what it costs to bring the older one current. And because this was a full renovation, not a quick cosmetic refresh, new kitchen appliances, new bathrooms, and new split AC system through the whole house. The big ticket items a buyer usually loses sleep over are the ones that were just handled. That's the piece a raw price per foot number won't tell you on its own. And it's exactly the kind of thing I'd want you thinking about. And while we're on carrying costs, let's talk property tax for a second, because there's a misconception here worth clearing up. On Oahu, the county reassesses every property every single year based on market value. A sale by itself doesn't automatically trigger a new assessment. What actually happens is the assessor looks at recent sales in the area to set those values. So if a home sells for a lot more than it's currently assessed at, that sale becomes strong evidence and the assessed value usually catches up the following year. If it sells right around its assessed value, you often won't see much change at all. Right now, this home is taxed at about $9,000 a year. And here's the part that really matters for a buyer. That number is high because the property currently sits in what's called the residential A class. That's any home over $1 million without a home exemption on file. The moment an owner moves in and files that home exemption, the property drops into the regular residential class. The rate falls to $3.50 per thousand, and you also knock $120,000 right off the taxable value. For a home like this, that can bring the yearly tax close to half of what it is now. So that $9,000 figure is really the investor number. An owner-occupant's number looks very different, and that's the one worth running before you decide what this place actually costs to hold.
Upstairs, the windows do the work. The whole back of the second floor faces the mountains, so you get that green every single time you come up. Good light, good airflow, and here's the feature that makes this floor plan stand out. There's a second primary suite up here with its own bathroom and a soaking tub. Two primary suites in one house, one on each level. That's not a common layout, and it's the kind of thing that gives you real options for how you actually use the space day to day. While we're up here, let me put this house in the context of its market. Across Kaneohe, the typical single-family home has been selling in the mid 1.2 millions over the past year. Island-wide, the middle of the market is closer to 1.15. Ahuimanu Hills tends to run at the upper end of Kaneohe, partly because the homes are a little larger and partly because that setting right up against the Koolau carries a premium.
So a renovated home like this, sitting in the mid 1.6 range, isn't out of line for the top tier of this particular pocket. And one number buyers almost never ask about: concessions. That's when a seller agrees to credit the buyer money at closing, usually to help cover closing costs or to buy down the interest rate. In the recent sales right here in this neighborhood, a couple of them included seller credits in the $5,000 to $12,000 range. It's worth knowing because a home can close right at its asking price on paper while the seller still handed back a credit on the side. The headline number and the real number aren't always the same, and that's exactly the kind of thing you want someone in your corner watching for. There's another bedroom up here facing the backyard and the mountains, a closet, and a second full bath. Practical, simple, done. Let me give you the pace of this market because it changes how you'd play an offer. When homes here have been priced right, they've moved quickly. Several of the recent sales went under contract in 8 to 12 days. Over the full year, the typical time was a bit longer, closer to 3 weeks. But the recent stretch has been fast. So this isn't a market where you've got a month to mull it over on the well-priced ones. It's also not a market to panic in. The honest read is simple: be ready, know your number going in, and don't let anyone rush you into the wrong one. Practically, that means getting your pre-approval done before you fall for something. So when the right home shows up, you can move on your own terms instead of scrambling to catch up. A couple of terms you'll see on this listing that are worth translating. The zoning is R7.5. That just means residential with a minimum lot size around 7,500 square feet. It's a low density designation, so you're not going to wake up next to an apartment block. The home also sits in flood zone D. Now, zone D doesn't mean high risk. It actually means FEMA hasn't formally studied and mapped the area. So the risk is listed as undetermined. In plain terms, flood insurance isn't automatically required the way it would be in a high-risk zone, but your lender can still ask for it. If you're serious about a home like this, get a flood quote early so there are no surprises. It's a 5-minute phone call, and it's worth making. The lot runs about 8,500 square feet, just under 2/10 of an acre, and that's right in the normal range here. Homes in this neighborhood sit on anywhere from about 7,500 up to 14,000 square feet. Keep in mind what the numbers told us earlier. In a place like this, most of the value is in the land, not the building. So a private usable yard like this is a bigger piece of the long-term value than people give it credit for. And here's a number that surprises almost everyone, and it ties right back to how we valued this home. You'd assume bigger homes cost more per square foot. In this neighborhood, it's flipped. The largest home that sold here this past year, well over 4,000 square feet, came in around $370 a foot. One of the smallest, under 1,700 feet, sold for about $870. More than double the price per foot, for less than half the house. That's exactly why when we placed this home in the range earlier, we didn't lean on an average. We compared it only to homes of a similar size and condition. Price per foot is a useful tool, but only like for like. Stretch it across different sizes and it'll fool you every time. 2 more numbers before we wrap, and they tell you who you're really up against. Out of roughly 192 homes in this neighborhood, only about 7 sold in the entire past year, under 4%. People who own here tend to stay, and right now, this is the only single-family home actively for sale in the whole neighborhood. So this isn't a market where you line up 10 options and pick your favorite. One more piece of context that makes this home stand out. Most of the houses here were built in a tight stretch from the late 70s into the late 80s. So the typical home in this neighborhood is now 40+ years old. That's exactly why a full current renovation is rare here, and why, when one does come up, it tends to draw the buyers who'd rather not take on a project. And one last thing about the lot, because the camera catches it at the very end. This is a flag lot. Picture a flag on a pole. The narrow pole is the driveway coming in from the street, and the wide flag is the home sitting back behind the other parcels. What that buys you is privacy.
You're set back off the road at the end of a cul-de-sac so it stays quiet and there's no through traffic. If privacy is high on your list, this lot shape is working in your favor. If you'd rather be right out on the street, it's just something to walk in person and feel for yourself. So let's bring it all home. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths on the listing. About 2,400 square feet, fully renovated this year, 2 primary suites, the larger one right on the main level. A flag lot at the end of a cul-de-sac with the mountains right behind it. Listed around 1.65 million after that $100,000 reduction. Against the comps, it's only about 35,000 more than a same-size home that wasn't renovated, and the county's own assessment shows you most of that value is in the land itself. For a home you can move straight into, that's a price that holds up to the math. That's the whole picture, numbers and all. What we did here, the comps, the assessment, the price per square foot, that's really just the surface. It's enough to give you some clarity, but a real buying or selling decision goes a lot deeper than one video. When I sit down with someone anywhere on Oahu, we get into the things you can't fit into a tour. Which offers actually got accepted and which fell apart. What's truly moving versus what's sitting, and how to structure an offer or price a listing so it actually lands. So take this as a starting point, not the final word. If you want to go deeper on your own situation, whether you're buying or selling, reach out. The link's below, and this is exactly the kind of work I love doing. I'm Oksana with Island Living Oahu. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.